welcome to the Double X Factor. I'm Anuradha Sengupta. The Double X Factor is, of course, the NBC TV 18's weekly show that gets you the world from the woman's point of view, from how to manage at the workplace to better work-life balance to unusual perspectives on the gender debate. This show is about women for everybody, and here's what we've got lined up today. The bill protecting women against sexual harassment at the workplace is expected to be introduced in Parliament this winter session. Find out how it will impact corporate India. Madhavi Lal, the HR head of Standard Chartered Bank, is our guest this week. And as gender diversity becomes a priority, women's networks become popular. Let's get into our top story. The Union Cabinet has just approved a bill that seeks to protect women from sexual harassment in their workplace. Now, this bill is expected to be introduced in the ongoing winter session of Parliament. So far, companies have based their policies to deal with sexual harassment on the Vishaka guidelines that were given by the Supreme Court in 1997. How much will this bill affect these policies when it becomes law? Shweta Shriram and Mansi Fadnis find out.
When the Supreme Court laid down a set of guidelines in 1997 to define what constitutes sexual harassment at the workplace, an enforceable law was expected to follow soon. But as that progressed very slowly, companies used the Vishaka guidelines as a basis to form their policies against sexual harassment. And now, over a decade later, the Parliament may be getting ready to take a significant step towards better defined, enforceable safeguards for women. If the Bill for Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment in the Workplace 2010, which draws on the Vishaka guidelines, goes through, here are some changes that we will see. Not just women employees, but any woman who enters the workplace will be entitled to protection. So a client, customer or apprentice in companies, students in educational institutions and patients in hospitals will all be covered. Workplaces in the unorganized sectors will also be covered. Employers will be required to set up an internal complaints committee. Establishments with less than 10 employees will have to set up a local complaints committee with a district officer. Employers who fail to comply with the provisions of the proposed bill will be punishable with a fine of up to 50,000 rupees. When a complaint is pending, the complainant can seek interim relief from work in the form of transfer or leave of absence. Employers will have to include the number of cases filed and disposed of in their annual report. Companies across sectors see this as a positive move that will make decisions regarding sexual harassment more enforceable. However, most of them say their internal policies are very comprehensive and the proposed provisions will make little difference operationally. IT major Infosys, which employs around 100,000 people, receives around 4 to 5 complaints a month. And the company is confident of the efficiency of its redressal system that was drawn up in 2000.
We have set up an institutional mechanism. We have a committee headed by an outside expert who is a woman. And we have an investigation arm, and we've been carrying through this for the last 10 years. So I think we have a well-documented, well-evolved policy in place which is being implemented.
There are organizations which have already progressed. What this is really doing is making sure everyone comes up to at least a minimum standard. So going back to the GenPact example, I think life won't change dramatically for us, but I think it is clearly laying down some common minimum standards of acceptability across the corporate world.
The provision that companies report the number of cases in their annual report and the fine of 50,000 rupees payable by non-compliant organizations will be steps that are new to companies. These steps are for the government to enforce the law effectively and are being welcomed even though the fine amount is being debated.
We already have an internal process where we have reporting requirements to our audit committee and to our board on any policy related violations or compliance related violations. So I think the law laying this down as a standard for all organizations is good because it will put in accountability. The fact that it goes out in the annual report is something which will make people take it, and organizations take it all the more seriously.
The amount of fines on the managements which do not, on the employers which do not really set up the committees or do not provide a proper place of work for women, okay, is very meager. It's 50,000 rupees. Say a big multinational does not have a sexual harassment committee or does not provide adequate safeguards for women. 50,000 is peanuts for them. So so if you are not complying with the law, the kind of punishment should be much more severe.
The bill may make some men ill at ease. There is a chance of cases resulting from false and malicious claims. But HR departments still hold that the safeguards for men are as sound as those for women and that protection of women will continue to be a bigger priority.
The fear of misuse should not deter us from creating a workplace free of harassment. And also, we have to be sensitive to the female gender, because when large number of female employees enter the workforce, very often superiors, they could be under the control of the superiors, and there could be instances where they suffer harassment quite quietly.
A large number of sexual harassment cases which I deal with are in respect of women, okay, who complain about sexual harassment, and because they make a complaint, their services are terminated, and then I am fighting cases on their behalf saying that they should be taken back on job.
Women in the unorganized sector are being seen as the biggest beneficiaries of this bill if it gets passed. Almost 400 million people, more than 85% of the working population in India, belongs to the unorganized sector. Of these, at least 120 million are women who are more vulnerable to sexual harassment, especially since they are not aware of their rights. Many women who have not taken any action despite being subject to various levels of sexual abuse are likely to benefit from the proposed law. But experts say this could help in theory only. There is a large shadow of a doubt on the government's ability to implement and enforce the law.
I'm afraid whether this bill will actually help them, because the implementation of the bill has to be very, very strong. I don't know how many of them will approach the local complaints committee as specified in the bill to redress the complaints, because they are so insecure. They'll be afraid to approach the local complaints committee. We need to look at the security, the space of the local complaints committee, the approachability of the local complaints committee, where they will be located, whether there will be a confidential space for them.
There are mixed opinions on whether the new law will reduce or increase the number of complaints that come in. But there is consensus that despite the weaknesses in its current form, it will be a step in the right direction.
It's the unorganized sector and really small business units that will need to figure out how they will implement all the provisions on that bill when it becomes a law. We're going to track the fortunes and the fate of that bill in Parliament on the double X factor in the coming weeks, so do look out for that. Now it's time for a break though. Coming up on the other side, our guest this week, Madhuri Lal. She's the head of the Human Resource Function at Standard Chartered Bank.